How are you guys? I hope you're fantastic. I'm back again with part two, right? Life sciences. Continuing from where we ended off, right? So we ended off in precocial and altricial development, right? Precocial and altricial development. So these are development strategies, right, that you find in birds, right? So let's start with precocial. What is precocial? So precocial is a developmental strategy whereby the young is independent of their mother. So it means that they're independent of their mother. They don't depend on their mother for food or for anything, for protection. So they are not dependent on their mother, right? For example of precocial, right? Bird is an ostrich. Can you say an ostrich? So the young are independent of their mother, right? So they don't need their mother to feed them. They don't need their mother to protect them because they can run from the predators and everything. So that's precocial, right? So let's look at the characteristics of precocial. So the characteristics of precocial, the young are born with eyes open, right? And they're born with soft feathers, or you can say down feathers, right? And also they can move on their own after hatching, right? They can move. They're mobile. They can move on their own. And also they can feed themselves. So they're independent of their mothers. And now let's go to altricial. So altricial is a developmental strategy where the young is dependent, right, on their mother. So they depend on their mother, right, for food, for protection. They're helpless, as they are saying here, right? So altricial is the opposite of precocial. So altricial, it means that they are born with eyes closed. They are born blind, right? They don't have down feathers, right? They cannot move on their own, right? This you find here, there's a human child, right? But we're speaking about reproduction in vertebrates, right? We haven't gotten to human reproduction. But human development is one of the examples of altricial because most of us we born with eyes closed. We cannot move, right? We cannot walk for ourselves. We need to first crawl and learn how to move as we grow up, right? So we cannot see right from the get-go. So that's altricial. So we are example of altricial development. I hope that makes a lot of sense. Okay, now I want to explain this to you guys. Right? Let's start with precocial. The reason why precocial offsprings, right? Offsprings that are precocial, that they can move for themselves and they can feed themselves, is because the mother provides them with a lot of food, with a lot of nutrition while they're still in eggs, right? When they are still in eggs. So the amniotic egg or the yolk sac within the amniotic egg is bigger. It has a lot of nutrition. Hence they're able to walk after hatching out of the egg, right? Whereas altricial, the mother provides less food when they're in, right, in the egg, when they're still in the egg. So the mother provides less food. So hence they hatch not seeing, they hatch not having down feathers, they hatch without being able to move because the mother before birth provides less nutrients. Whereas in precocial, the mother before birth provides more nutrients. Does that make sense? I hope that makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's move. And also, guys, I want to bring something to your attention, right? We also provide online classes, online private classes. If you need help with life sciences and you need to get a distinction, you say that you're prepared to study and put in enough work, right? If you want us to assist you with regards to life sciences, you can contact us. We'll leave our details, right? Our WhatsApp details, WhatsApp number. You can WhatsApp us, you can call us, right? It's your choice, right? You can call us, you can WhatsApp us, and we'll come back to you, right? If you want us to tutor you privately with regards to life sciences, do question papers with you, answer different exam question papers with you, and I'm telling you, and if you're willing to study, I'm telling you, distinction is guaranteed with regard to life sciences. We also offer classes, private classes for geography, right? We offer private classes for English, right? But if you wanted to tutor you in one subject, then we charge just 200 per month, right? It's just a monthly payment, fixed monthly payment of 200 per month if you want one subject. But if you want maybe like three subjects, you want geography, life sciences, English, right? Let's say you want three, then we'll charge you 150 per subject, which is 450 per month, right? If it's three subjects. So we also offer private online classes, right? If you're really interested in getting a distinction and having someone to hold your hand and do question papers with you and everything. Does that make sense? But if you're doing one subject, it's 200 per month, it's just a fixed amount, right? I hope that is clear. Now let's go to human reproduction. So human reproduction, how do humans reproduce, right? Human reproduction. So in human reproduction, we're going to start with the female reproductive organ, right? Female reproductive organ, right? And the next thing we're going to focus on is the male reproductive system. I hope that makes sense, right? And the next thing we're going to focus on is puberty. What is puberty, right? At what age do you reach puberty? And the next thing we're going to focus on subsequent to puberty is the menstrual cycle. The menstrual cycle, different cycles, different stages in the menstrual cycle, the ovarian cycle and the uterine cycle. Right? The next thing we're going to focus on is hormonal control of the menstrual cycle. So hormones that are involved in the menstrual cycle. Right? I hope that is clear. And the last thing we're going to focus on is the development of the fetus, right? Development of the fetus, right? The gestation period, right? Okay, let's continue. Now let's look at the male reproductive system. So the male reproductive system, right? The first part in the male reproductive system is the scrotum, right? Or you can say the testes. Testes. So here they did not include the scrotum, right? But I'm going to include it, right, for you guys. So we have the front view, right, of the male reproductive system, and we have the side view of the male reproductive system, right? I hope that's clear. So let's start with the front view. So the first part is the bag-like. We have a bag-like structure that's enclosing the testes, right? What's the function of that bag-like structure? So the function of the scrotum is to maintain the temperature within the testes, right? So they maintain the temperature. So the scrotum maintains the temperature in the testes, right? So they keep the temperature right at 35 degrees Celsius or at 2 degrees below the body temperature. What is the body temperature? The body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius, right? So the scrotum regulates, right, the temperature in the testes. Okay, let's go to the testes. Then within the scrotum, you find the testes. What's the function of the testes? So the function of the testes is that it's the site for meiosis. So this is where meiosis takes place, right? And also, what's another function is that is the production of what? Sperms or production of spermatozoa. That's the second function. And so that's where sperms are produced in the testes. And the next function is that the testes, they produce a hormone called testosterone, right? Testosterone, right? Which is the hormone that's responsible for puberty in males. I hope that's clear, right? I'm going to repeat the functions. So the first function is that it's the site for meiosis. The second function, that's where sperms are produced, right? Responsible for production of sperms. And the last function is that the testes, they produce testosterone, which is a male hormone that's responsible for puberty, right? I hope that makes a lot of sense. Okay, then from the testes, we move from the testes, we go to our epididymis, right? This coiled tube-like structure that's wrapping your testes. So it's wrapping the testes, right? I hope that makes a lot of sense. So it's wrapping the testes. Okay, so what's the function of the epididymis? So the function of epididymis is that they store sperm temporarily until they mature, right? They store sperm temporarily until they mature. So that's the function of the epididymis. Then we move from epididymis, we go to our vas deferens. This tube-like structure, right? It's called what? Vas deferens, right? Other books, They might call it sperm duct, right? Ejaculatory duct, and all that, right? But it's the vas deferens. So what's the function of the vas deferens? We can see that the vas deferens connects your epididymis, right, and your urethra, right? So they connect your epididymis to your urethra. I hope that makes sense. And you see the pipe travels from your epididymis to your urethra. Does that make sense? To the urethra. Okay, we'll get to the urethra and its function, right? Then after our vas deferens, right? After our vas deferens, we have our accessory glands here, right? We have our accessory glands, right? Accessory glands. So, and we have three accessory glands. The first accessory gland we have our seminal vesicle. So this is our seminal vesicle, right? After our seminal vesicle, we have our corpus gland. So this is our corpus gland, right? Can you see the corpus gland? And the last gland is our prostate gland. And they are in no particular order, guys. Right? The first gland, right, is our seminal vesicle. Second gland is our prostate gland. The third gland is our corpus gland. I hope that makes sense, right? I hope that makes sense. And what's the function of each of these accessory glands? Let's start with our seminal vesicle. So our seminal vesicle, they will provide nutrition for the sperm. So they're responsible for providing nutrition for the sperm, right? So that the sperm can move. Does that make sense? Because the sperm cannot move without nutrition. Okay, let's go to our second accessory gland, which is prostate gland. So what's the function of prostate gland? So the function of prostate gland is that they provide alkaline fluid to the sperm so that it neutralizes the acidity in the vagina, right? So the prostate gland provides the sperm with alkaline fluid. To do what? To neutralize the acidity within the vagina. Okay, and our third gland, right, is our corpus gland. So what's the function of our corpus gland? The function of corpus gland, they provide the sperm with mucus. So they provide our sperm with mucus. What's the function of this mucus? The function of this mucus is to lubricate, right? Is to bring about lubrication so that it's easier to move in the female's vagina, right? So it's for movement. So the mucus is for, it allows for the sperm to move easily because it's slimy. Does that make sense? Okay. And the secretions, all of the secretions of the prostate, of the accessory glands, all of them in combination or in integration, we call them semen, right? When they combine, they form what we call what? Semen, right? Okay, now let's move away from our accessory glands and we get to our urethra, this pipe within our penis, right? So this pipe, does that make sense? Our urethra. So what's the function of the urethra? So the function of the urethra is that it's the it's the passage for urine and semen, or you can say it's the passage for urine and sperm, right? So this is where urine and sperm are transported. I hope that makes a lot of sense, right? Okay, then what encloses this urethra? What encloses this urethra is the penis, right? So what's the function of the penis? The penis plays a vital role during copulation. So copulation is sexual intercourse, right? So it plays a vital role in copulation. Does that make sense? Okay, we're done with the our front view. Now let's try to identify the same parts in our side view. The first thing, so this is our bag-like structure. So this bag-like structure is called the scrotum. Remember, is responsible for temperature regulation. Then we have our testes. Our testes are responsible for meiosis and production of sperm. Lastly, they're responsible for producing a male hormone called testosterone, which is responsible for puberty, right? Then after our testes, you have our epididymis. As a function of our epididymis, they store immature sperm temporarily until they mature. Then from our epididymis, we have our vas deferens, this tube that connects the epididymis to our urethra, right? To our urethra. This is our urethra, right? So this tube is called what? The vas deferens. Connects the epididymis to the urethra, right? Okay. Then after our vas deferens, we have our three accessory glands. The first one, we have our seminal vesicle. What's the function of our seminal vesicle? The function of seminal vesicle is that it provides nutrition for the sperm, right? Then from our seminal vesicle, we'll go to our next one. Our next one is what? It's our prostate gland, right? So what's the function of our prostate gland? Prostate gland provides, right, alkaline fluid to the sperm to neutralize the acidity within the vagina. Because without that alkaline fluid, the sperm wouldn't be able to survive within the vagina, right? I hope that makes a lot of sense, right? So this view does not show, right, corpus gland, right, effectively does not show the corpus gland vividly. Hence, it's not shown in this picture. I hope it makes a lot of sense. Then after our accessory glands, we have our urethra. Remember, our urethra is the passage for urine and semen, or you can say urine and sperm. I hope it makes sense. And our urethra is enclosed by our penis. And we said with our penis plays a vital role with regards to copulation. Hope that makes a lot of sense. So this is our male reproductive system and the functions of different parts in the reproductive system. Right? Okay. Where am I going now? Okay, I've already explained this, the parts there, right? So I won't spend a lot of time there. Now, let's focus on the structure of the sperm. Right? So the structure of the sperm. Remember, our sperm is formed after meiosis, right? So meiosis forms gametes, right? It forms gametes, and those gametes in males are called what? Sperms, right? Does that make sense? So now let's look at the structure of a mature sperm or spermatozoa. So this is the structure of a mature sperm. Right, the head is mainly made up of, so it has three parts before I get to that part. So it has three parts. You have the tail, right, and you have the middle piece, and you have the head, or you can say the middle part, right? So the tail is responsible for movement. I hope that makes sense. And the mitochondria, the middle piece contains the mitochondria within it, the mitochondria within it. And what's the function of mitochondria is to provide the sperm with energy. Remember, you learned about cellular respiration. The process that takes place within the mitochondria is cellular respiration. And what's the function of cellular respiration is to provide energy, right? So the mitochondria provides energy for the sperm. And then you have your head. Within your head, you have, within the head of the sperm, not your head, rather, within the head of the sperm, right, you have the nucleus. What's the function of the nucleus? The function of the nucleus is that it contains genetic material, right? Genetic material. Since this sperm, right, comes from the male reproductive system, it contains 22 autosomes and one X and one Y chromosome or X chromosome. So it can contain X or Y chromosome. So here they're saying gonosome because gonosomes are just sex chromosomes, right? So remember, in the nucleus you get 23 chromosomes. You get 22 autosomes and either X or Y chromosome, or X or Y chromosomes, the same, right? Then at the tip of the sperm, you have your acrosome. What's the function of the acrosome? An acrosome is an enzyme, right? It penetrates the membrane of an ovum. So it penetrates the membrane of an ovum. I hope that makes sense. So this is the structure of the sperm. Let me just repeat it again. You have your tail. Your tail is responsible for movement, right? So the tail of the sperm is responsible for movement. You have the middle piece. The middle piece contains the mitochondria, and the mitochondria gives the sperm energy. And the last part is the head. And the head, within the head, we find the nucleus. And the nucleus contains 22 autosomes and either X or a Y chromosome, or you can say chromosome. It's fine. Right, so your the nucleus of the sperm contains what? Genetic material. Then we have the last part, which is the acrosome at the tip of the sperm. The acrosome is an enzyme. It does what? It breaks down or it eats away the membrane of the ovum during fertilization, right? So that the nucleus can enter. Okay, we're done with the structure of the sperm. We already explained this. Then let's go to the female reproductive system. So we have a side view again, and we have a front view. Let's start with our front view. So our front view, right, the first part that we see here in our female reproductive system is our ovary, right? What's the function of ovaries? So our ovary is the site for meiosis. So this is where meiosis takes place, right? So you have two ovaries, and within those ovaries, that's where meiosis takes place. So it's the site for meiosis, and also it's responsible for producing estrogen, which is a female hormone that's responsible for puberty, right? So it's responsible for producing estrogen. Okay, then after when we move away from our ovary, we enter our fallopian tube. This tube-like structure, right, is called the fallopian tube. And we have two fallopian tubes, right, on the right-hand side and our left-hand side, right? Okay, two fallopian tubes. What's the function of our fallopian tube? Our fallopian tube is the site of fertilization. So it's the site of fertilization. So this is where fertilization happens in the fallopian tubes, right? Okay. Then we move away from fallopian tubes. We go to the uterus, right? So what's the function of the uterus? The function of the uterus is that it allows for implantation of the embryo, or it carries the embryo during pregnancy or during gestation. I hope that makes a lot of sense, right? And there's a lining, right, in the uterus. That lining is called endometrium. This is where the embryo implants, right, after fertilization. So this is where the embryo implants. So it thickens during fertilization, right, so that the embryo could implant here, right? And then we move away from our uterus, and there's an opening just after the uterus. So the uterus, after the uterus, we have the cervix, right? We have the cervix here. We call this the cervix. Obviously, the cervix contracts and relaxes during birth, right? It contracts and relaxes during birth. Then after the cervix, we have our vagina, right? So the vagina, what's the function of the vagina? It intercepts, right, the penis during copulation. So it intercepts the penis during copulation. Then after a vagina, we have an opening at the tip, right here, the vulva, right? They pretty much have the same function as the vagina because the vulva is part of the vagina, right? I hope that makes a lot of sense. Now let's go to our side view. So our side view, we can see that we have our ovary. So this is our ovary. So you should know both the front view and the side view. This is our ovary, right? Ovary is responsible for what? It's the site for meiosis, and also is responsible for producing a female hormone called estrogen that's responsible for puberty. Right, then as we move away from our ovary, we enter our fallopian tubes, right? We enter our fallopian tubes. This fallopian tube is the site for fertilization, the site for fertilization, right? Then after our fallopian tube will lead us to the uterus, right? The fallopian tube will lead us to the uterus. Remember, then from the uterus, there's a cervix at the tip of the uterus, or the ending of the uterus is called what? The cervix. Then from the cervix, we have the vagina. Then from the vagina, we have the tip here, and the tip is the vulva, right? I hope that makes a lot of sense. Hope that makes a lot of sense, right? Let me check my battery here before I continue. Okay, it's in percent. Okay, so we're done with our female reproductive system, right? Now let's look at the structure of the ovum. Let's look at the structure of the ovum. So you can see the structure of the ovum. I'll just leave out the unnecessary things that are not examinable for you guys. The only things that you have to know is three layers. You need to know the nucleus, right? So the nucleus, the nucleus carries the genetic material. It carries 22, right? It carries 22 autosomes and one X chromosome. 22 autosomes and one X chromosome. And we have our cytoplasm, right? In the structure of an ovum. I have the cytoplasm. Does that make sense? Cytoplasm. And these around the cytoplasm are called follicle, right? Follicle cells. They're surrounding they're protecting the ovum itself. So we have follicle cells, right? I hope that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so this is our ovum, a structure of our ovum, and you need to know the structure. Okay, this is a practice question. Okay, let's move. I think I'm going to focus on menstruation individually because it's complex. It contains a lot of information and also a lot of hormones. So I'm going to focus on menstruation individually, and I'll just take it out as part three, right? Because I don't want to prolong this video, right? So that you don't lose your focus span. I hope that makes a lot of sense, guys. So this is part two. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you need some private tutoring online, right? I told you the prices. You can contact us on WhatsApp, and we'll help you. Distinction guaranteed, as long as you're willing to study and everything. Thank you, guys.